Morning and welcome from the Caribbean. Good morning to everyone and good evening to our participants from India. Thank you for joining us in part three of the WebJam series in Unboxing Industry 4.0, hosted by the Center of Excellence for Industry 4.0, an agreement between WhiteBoard Labs, the University of the West Indies Open Campus, and Arni University. I trust that everyone can hear me. So in today's discussion, it involves data and decisions. So this discussion is primarily between industry and academia. We are joined by Dr. Rohit Shipstone, our industry specialist, as well as Mr. Shiv Tohan and Dr. SP Singh, who would be our academia specialist. So the ability to make effective decisions is crucial to an organization's survival in today's business environment. In order for firms to evaluate alternatives and make informed decisions, they must have reliable and timely data upon which to make their decisions. So in today's webjam, we would look at the decision-making process, what's required to make proper, well-informed decisions in Industry 4.0, what are the competencies needed to be a decision maker in the future industry, as well as we will look at decisions and data in Industry 4.0 from the academic perspective. So I would like to introduce Dr. Rohit Shipstone and Dr. SP Singh. But before I hand over to Dr. Shipstone, I would like to introduce Mr. Shiv Tohan. So Mr. Shiv Tohan is a passionate leader with world-class communication skills and a long track record of successful management. Mr. Tohan has a master's in software engineering, extensive knowledge of current economic and industry experience for more than 12 years with a deep understanding of social and regulatory issues. Drawing on links between pedagogy and philosophy in technology in higher education, Mr. Tohan's current initiative addresses digital technology integration for learning across higher institutions, ethical and issues across involving digital media and colleges, and related socio-material approaches to qualitative inquiry using artificial intelligence and curriculum and development for Industrial Revolution 4.0. An inspiring and motivational executive with first-rate interpersonal skills and the ability and passion to develop the vision of any organization he leads. He is able to push performance management whilst at the same time delivering growth. Possessing vast managing directorship and CEO experience, he will always ensure that clear objectives and expectations are delivered and maintained. So, with that, I would like to introduce Dr. Shipstone, who would make our main presentation, and then we will go into our discussion. So, Dr. Rohit, over to you.
Thank you, Riaz, and good evening to everyone in India and a good morning to people in the West Indies. I am going to share a presentation with you and I'm just putting it up. I hope you can see it on your screens.
Yes, we can.
Great. So as Riaz had said, our topic today is data and decisions. As usual, we are going to take a very layman's approach to this topic. We'll open up the box as we've been doing in the past, and we will try and be as transparent as possible throughout the presentation, and will welcome any questions after that. So I'm going to start the presentation now. We will be referring to this presentation throughout our discussions. Data and decisions is the topic, as we had told you earlier. And the reason we have chosen this topic is because of its importance in Industry 4.0. If you look at the way things are being done today and how they could be done in the future, you will see the difference and what we are talking about. This presentation and this WebJam series is brought to you by the Joint Center of Excellence for Industry 4.0 which has been founded by the University of West Indies, Arni University, and Collabso Solutions, or WhiteBoard Labs, which I represent. Through the Center of Excellence, we are delivering three things. One is Industry 4.0 business training, which is essentially to enhance employability amongst the youth and young professionals. The second thing that we do there is business consulting for Industry 4.0 towards SMEs, which is a very affordable kind of a package that we have created there. And lastly, what we strongly believe in is that Industry 4.0 technology can be harnessed for good as well. So we, in line with that, we have started this incubation center, which is essentially for social entrepreneurs who may be working with the technologies or processes of Industry 4.0. That's a little bit about the Center of Excellence. And with that, we'll get into our main topic. And let's start at the very basic, at the very beginning, and understand what is a decision. And when we look at that, and we look at a general definition from Cambridge Dictionary, it says a choice that you make about something after thinking about many possibilities. So it's about a choice and it's about possibilities. If you look at the other definition meanings, it talks of verdicts, it talks of rulings, judgment, arbitration, sentence, etc., etc. A lot of confusing stuff out there. And so let's cut through this confusion right now and understand from our perspective what we are talking about. And we'll refer to a management definition of decision making. And when we do that, what we see is this. A decision can be defined as a course of action purposely chosen from a set of alternatives to achieve organizational goals or managerial objectives or goals. So here it's about a decision, which is a course of action to achieve certain goals. And they're usually made to overcome problems. So if I have a management goal or organization goal, which is anyway getting achieved, I don't need a decision there, right? I only need a decision, I only need a choice when there's a problem. So mostly decision making is about problems and problem solving. And that itself is a complex process. And after that process is what you have to do is take judgment calls or decisions. So how do you take a decision is the question. Normally today, these are the three steps. You talk of a perception based on which you create a definition, you create an analysis. You come to a situation of a go or no go. Then you do a bit of fact finding. What are the possible solution, alternatives, etc., which are available? You do an evaluation of the possibilities and you arrive at a decision. The problem with this is that this is typically based on gut feel and perception. If you see, the first thing that talks about is perception. And in today's world, perception really has no meaning. And as we go along, you'll understand why I'm saying this. What we are therefore going to talk about is something called rational decision making, which is scientific. Rational decision making, again, is a process, but it involves data now. It involves data collection, which is based on measurable goals. It involves analysis of the patterns and the facts which come out from that data and its analysis. And then utilizing that, it goes into strategies and activities that may benefit the organization in terms of achieving its goals. Now we must understand data could be qualitative or quantitative. But whatever it is, there is no room for perception or gut feel in the rational decision-making process. So how do you take a rational decision? We come to that point. So let us understand and base our further discussions on Peter Drucker's rational steps of decision making. These are the steps that he talked about: define the problem, analyze the problem, develop alternative solutions, decide on the best solution, convert the decisions into effective actions. On top of that, I'd like to add three more things from my side. And this is it. See, every problem and its solution, and you can put this in any perspective that you want, it will influence people, planet, and profits. Any decision, whether it's a business decision, or it's a social decision, or a government decision, it will influence one of these three. So let's keep this at the back of our minds as we go forward. So rational decision making, the first step is cause identification. And how do you do that? You identify an apparent problem. You seek and analyze the causes. And once you've done that, you'll actually come out with the real problem. So there's a difference between what you think is the problem and what actually may be the problem. So that problem definition is a very important step. And the way we do it, the way one can do it, one of the ways is through a root cause analysis, where we will take up a fishbone diagram. As you can see, there's a problem. There are causes of that problem, and there are secondary causes. So there are primary causes and there are secondary causes. Now, when you analyze any cause, whether it is primary or secondary, what you will find is that you need data to understand what it is. If you want the truth, you need data right there. Once you have the data, you have a scientifically clear picture of what that problem or the cause is. Once you know that, you come to the solution and the validation process. So once you know the problem, you think of the various solutions, you identify alternative solutions, you choose the best, and then you validate it. And this is a very simplistic view of the whole thing. Of course, it is much more complicated, as we'll see later. And as part of this, again here, we are identifying possible alternatives. This is again based on data. Predicting the consequences of each alternative again needs data. And choosing the alternative path to follow, or the best choice, as we say, involves understanding what are the implications of that decision or the possible decision. And that again, the best view would be a data view. Now, this is a decision-making process. We call it the integrated process. We start with the identification of the problem, going up to collecting the information, identifying the alternatives which are available, weighing the alternatives, choosing from the alternatives, implementing the action, and finally evaluating the results. And now, as you will see, I'm calling out the sources. The red ones are all data sources. The green ones are certain competencies one will need to be able to achieve that step. As you can see, there's a huge dependence on data in this entire process. And that's the point we're trying to make here. That is the importance of data in rational and scientific decision making. Now, the question is, why is rational data-driven decision making important? And these are the reasons. In Industry 4.0, the ecosystem of Industry 4.0 revolves around a digital ecosystem which constantly generates customer and business data, including competition trends, news, digital talks, etc. What we are doing right now is also generating data on that, information on that. We need to understand that There are 2 billion devices in the world which are connected to the net today, generating 1.7 MB of data per second. Do a back of the envelope calculation and you'll come to a daily figure and imagine what's happening out there. And just for your information, with the, okay, we're still at the start of the curve in terms of data analysis, analytics, but we've not even covered 2% of the data which is existing today. If you look at the world map, 61% of the world is connected, exchanging information, preferences, likes, dislikes, Facebook, Google, whatnot, right? That is all data which is getting generated. We are living in a connected world and we are collectively giving out information about ourselves. We're giving out information about what we want, and all that data is valuable. This data provides a gold mine of information for business or health, finance, transport. You take any segment, anything. It's a gold mine for them. Why is data important? Firstly, data allows organizations to effectively determine the cause of problems, and this is what we have seen in the earlier slides. Secondly, data helps to understand and improve business processes to reduce wasted money and time. You see, if I have a business process and I'm not getting the impact, expected impact of that process, whether qualitative or quantitative, and if my data analysis tells me I'm not getting that, I would do away with that process. I would save that money. I would save that time. Thirdly, data has the potential to increase profitability by this very fact. I can get rid of processes which are not profitable for me. I can find better avenues, better green fields to which are more profitable, where I can work better. So it helps me to increase my profitability. And thirdly, in my opinion, most importantly, data has the potential to save lives. And this can be seen in a multiple of ways, whether it's the health industry, pharmaceutical industry, telecom industry, anything. People set up helplines. Based on what? On the need. The need is based on data, right? If I look at some common use cases to illustrate what I've been talking about, today, HR is looking at data of for possible recruitment. Marketing is focusing on data for market segmentation. Who are the consumers who are ready to buy? How can I reduce my time to market? And we talked about this in the first webinar as well. If you look at the production side, I can actually streamline my entire production line. I can get my product into the customer's hands much quicker if I have data and information about my customers, about the regions, about my value chain. If I have that information, I can possibly reduce my time to market, reduce my time to customer. I can reduce my time to support the customers. So these are just three use cases that I've taken up, and this is just for illustration. But believe me, you talk of any business process in an organization and you'll find the same thing to be true there. So therefore, today data is an integral part of a company. Integral part. Everything, every process, every person, directly or indirectly, will depend on data. So how does an organization use data to make decisions? This is the crux. And the fact is, an organization does not use data to make decisions. Don't be surprised. Allow me to illustrate. An organization uses information and knowledge to make decisions. And how this works is, because there are three things. Those three things are data, information, and knowledge, and we'll see the relationship of each to the other. See, data is raw fact. It's numbers. It's unorganized. If I take out a data sheet and hand it over to Riaz or to Shiv, they won't be able to make a head or tail of it. Right? They're basically objects. Now, if you want data to make sense, you need to convert it into the right format in a timely manner to the right person. What that means is, if I've got health data, there's no point in giving that health data to me. That health data should go to the CEO of a pharmaceutical or a health company. Right? So the right person is the target person. It has to be timely. You can't take out data which is 10 years back and expect a CEO to make a decision in 2020. And it has to be in the right format for it to make any sense. Then comes the third aspect, which is knowledge. So knowledge is the human faculty which results from your experience. So as a CEO, if I get information, I will then superimpose my experience and my knowledge on top of that to make sense of whatever that problem is and come to some kind of a decision. So therefore, different levels of people fall use this kind of information differently. So data would typically be with a data analyst, information would be with the MIS, and the knowledge superimposition would be probably at the board of directors or the CEO level. What goes into a good decision, therefore, is as follows. And this is a summary of what we've discussed. You have a phase which is data collection, you have a data analysis phase, you have a phase where the data analysis report is getting converted into information, and then on top of that being superimposed as a knowledge repository. All of this has three considerations: people, environment, and business. I cannot take a decision without having an impact on one of these three. And that's where knowledge comes in. As an experienced person, how can I choose the solution which does not negatively impact any of these and yet helps me to maximize my business or my profits? In today's world, this is a very important aspect from any perspective that you look at. In our first webinar, we had talked about people and what is the people's relationship to business. And I talked about the relationship being that we are the stakeholders all through in industry. We are the consumers, we are the industry itself, and we are the society in which industry operates. We govern industry, yet we work for industry. At the same time, we are the consumers. So any decision being taken by a business or an industry will have some effect on me at any given time. Secondly, environment is very important today. Is my business decision affecting that environment? So these are the issues where knowledge helps. It's not only about data, it's not only about information. It's finally about knowledge. As we go forward, let us see the core competencies that may be needed to go through this entire decision-making process. And these competencies, every candidate who's looking for a job, any employee who has a job, he will need to do at whatever level. If he's at the junior most level, he may be resolving smaller problems. He may be taking smaller decisions. If he's at the mid-manager level, it will be higher. And obviously at the management level, he's taking very major decisions and resolving major problems. Problem identification. This is the root. If my identification is wrong, my entire decision making will be wrong. Very critical part. Collecting the data. I can go collect data from all over the place, but is that data useful? Is it valid? Is it through a poll? Have I gotten people together, built a consensus? It's very important to have the right data, validated data. Thirdly, what are the possible solutions? How do you generate them? Critical thinking, creativity, lateral thinking, design thinking, all these competencies form part of this. Evaluating and choosing solutions, your risk assessment, your analysis, the costs, the impact. Risk analysis in any case, to my mind, should be a separate step. Once you've come up with a certain list of solutions, one must analyze each one, assess the risk. And the risk again could be in three parts. It could be people, it could be environment, it could be the business. Critical thinking throughout this process is critical. Let me put it that way. If one does not take it in that, take that step and keep it as a parallel running competency throughout the process, we're going to be in trouble, believe me. So these are the competencies. Of course, they are not all of them. This is highlighted just for understanding right now. There are many more competencies which are required. The question is, how do you learn these competencies? From where do you learn? And all I can say is you learn from you learn with us, you learn from the Center of Excellence. We are giving Industry 4.0 business training and certification. It covers all non-technical. It's a business training, remember, as per a curriculum, and it's jointly delivered by University of West Indies and WhiteBoard Labs. The curriculum, the core curriculum, has over 64 courses which are covered there. We also have the option of upscaling some courses like business analytics. You can upscale, you can do a certificate or a degree course from the UWI Open Campus on business analytics. You can also do that for communications, which is again a very critical competence of Industry 4.0. All in all, the entire package that is there in the Center of Excellence has something like 200 odd courses, which are specifically for Industry 4.0 training. And these are also packaged within industry. So there's a curriculum which is, let's say, for insurance industry. There's a curriculum which is for retail. There's a curriculum which is for automobile. There are different industries. 5 industries are covered, including e-commerce. All these industries have their own competencies which they require and which are covered through the Center of Excellence as well. Over 100 of them are related courses in critical thinking, design thinking, etc., jointly from UWI and WBL. And they're all delivered from our Industry 4.0 Center of Excellence. And that's it from my side. These are the contacts. We can share them with you later. And Riaz, back to you. I will stop the sharing now.
A great presentation, Dr. Shipstone.
Thank you.
At this time, I would like anyone to have who have questions. Could you please enter it into the chat room? And to get the ball rolling, someone actually reached out to my WhatsApp and they ask a very intricate question, and I would like to pose this to the panel.
Before
So
that, Riaz, may I interrupt?
go ahead.
Uh, I would like to take the priority and ask a question myself,
Okay,
if
you
you
can go
don't
ahead.
mind.
Sure.
So, I'd like to ask Shiv, um, Shiv, from an academic perspective, you saw the presentation. From an academic perspective, how do you think this whole bridge can be created? And this question is not only for you, it's for Professor S.P. Singh as well. I'd like the opinion of you both, a short view of that before we move on to other questions.
Okay, so let me start processing.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. See, the presentation was very informative about decision making. It concludes the process of decision making. Talk about rational scientific process of decision making. But what I feel from the academia side, we are now entering in the industrial force revolution globally. As per our Indian education policy, not the new one that India have launched, the previous one, which have catered your industrial second and third revolution. Third revolution is up to your cloud computing, integrations, centralizations, so many things with the information technology. But that policy was came into existence before the internet revolution. But now the new policy, it comes in the age of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and it is more focused about multidisciplinary education, which definitely gives the pillar to the student of the country and academia to meet the requirement of the industrial fourth revolution. What I want to say, suppose in the decision making process, like for example, like at a company, very renowned company, not in India, globally, our Tatas have started their business in the first revolution of the industry, and now they are entering into the fourth revolution also. So the decision making process they have used, it is rational also, it is scientific also, and it may be now experienced also. So what do you feel our students in academia, what we need to cater in the curriculum wise, technology wise, infrastructure wise, to meet the need of the industrial fourth revolution? Back to you.
Sure. So, see, Shiv, if you remember those three things: data, information, and knowledge, right? And let's go back to the example of the Tatas, right?
Yeah.
Now, Tatas has a lot of experience, tremendous experience.
Yeah.
Today, data is at the fingertips as well. Yeah. Now, if they have data and information, which has been built over the years, and experience which has been gathered over all those years, then knowledge will be tremendous. Yeah. So the
Yeah.
knowledge part is what applies to the director level of any organization. The information part is the mid level. And below that comes the data part. So when you try and map students into such a process, they definitely cannot be at the knowledge level because that experience is completely missing. That experience is yet to
Yes.
come. So you need to map students into the first two, the data gathering, the data analysis, the data science, right? The conversion of data into information. That's where the students need to be trained and educated on.
Okay.
I hope that
So,
answers your question.
yeah. So, for academia side, we need research projects, pilot projects that can proven the new technology like AI or machine learning to the students, so that the adoption of the technology as experience wise, as per experience, will be helpful for them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And that's what I wanted to ask Professor Singh, Dr. S.P. Singh. Uh, so how do you think those bridges can be built between academia and industry?
Thank you, Rohit, for a very interesting and a very insightful presentation in which you really talked about the whole decision-making process, the importance of data. Just to recapitulate a bit and then use it as a launching pad to make my point, I would say that you very aptly pointed out that each individual or organization in pursuit of goal invariably would involve in decision making, and therefore honing these skills is very critical to the whole process of education. People need to make informed choices. And as you said, that probably one thing I would like to say is that rational and intuitive or gut feeling based management, I would not see them as binary opposites, but probably that data driven or data driven rational kind of decision making can provide the necessary raw material on which the experience can play a part. Rather, it can provide a basic feed for the experience, and it can by for presenting the patterns, which a lot of analytical tools help us. People can make more, they can give vent to their experience in making more accurate choices. Also, you talked about data and competencies, data, and that is very critical in the process of education. Now, what we are trying to do, especially Shiv talked about the new education policy, which constantly builds the idea of research, the ability to evaluate, the necessary skills to evaluate data, to use analytical tools that are available so that effective decision making could be made. Dr. Shipstone, as you talked about, that probably most of the students will be at the decision-making knowledge level only when they advance high in their career. But at the same time, right from the beginning, it is good for them to have the overall perspective of things so that they know that the data that they are gathering, the data they are probably using, how it is going to be utilized later. And another very interesting thing that we see is that people don't wait for long to reach the director's level. It is also an era of startups. It is
Yeah.
also an era where young entrepreneurs are really shaping our world. And I believe that it would increasingly become the norm. So it becomes a challenge for the entire academic enterprise to provide learners with certain research competencies where they are trained to gather the necessary data. They are trained in the art of analytical thinking using analytical tools, and also uh, using the engines that are available in the environment around us so that they are in sync with what is happening. The ways to do that would be, as Shiv pointed it out, would be to give students projects, have engage them in research, assignment, and so that they continue to learn the critical business skills and they see the applied aspect of the knowledge that they have gathered. One important thing where industry and academia can bridge together is bringing live research projects, because the enormous human potential that is available in the academia can be harnessed by the industry at very low cost for students that are at the learning stage. They are in need of exposure. And I believe a certain amount of synergy can be created at that point. The students get exposure. They get to see their horizon is widened as they see how the data which they gather is used in critical decision making. At the same time, the industry gets some bright minds at a low cost. And I believe this kind of interaction, this coming together, would be required more and more in days ahead.
Absolutely, sir. I agree with you, and thank you for that insight. I also, what we'll also do is this message we will take to industry and try from our end, give that a push to get the projects, to get the internships to the students, for the students. One thing that I liked about what you said, and I really appreciate that, is the exposure of students, even who are at the data gathering level, to knowing what will happen post what they've done. And in our company, we do exactly that. It's a very collective wisdom kind of a company. All everybody from the junior most to the senior most together dwell on things. But then it's possible for us because we are small, we are flexible, we are agile. But the same process cannot be expected from a company like Tata's. But at the same time, I agree, we should find a way to at least partly get the junior most people also involved. And I think let's open it up to questions, and we're all three here, Riaz. Um,
Okay, great. Thank you. We have a lot of buzz on the Facebook page from the Caribbean side. So I have a question here from Keisha Demas. Keisha wants to know, what are the most common data collection and data analysis tools used today?
I think I'll ask Shiv to answer that.
There are so many information gathering tools to collect the data. Like you collect the data from your different man-to-man resources, over from the network also, but exactly from the even from the categorization from the previous history, there are so many tools. But to organize that data, you need to learn how to organize that data.
I'll add to that, Riaz.
This is the answer from my side.
Thank you, Shiv. I'll add to that, Riaz. One must always also be careful on the privacy side of it, right? If you look at Facebook, it gives you a lot of data, it gives you a lot of information. It has a lot of analytical tools, right? Facebook would ensure that the laws of privacy are being met. Okay, so whatever tool one is using, one should be very careful that those tools are in line with the legal provisions of the law, right? If one wants to refer, you can go to the GDPR rules, which are listed openly on the internet. You can understand it. One should take care not to flout that, you know, not cross that line in terms of collecting data. So don't go web crawling, for example. I don't think that would be a good idea. If you start crawling all over your websites, then that won't be a nice thing. But use tools which are there, which are standard, and which adhere to the rules of data privacy.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And we have a question from the group here. How can I correlate this data? So we talk a lot about data. We talk a lot about data and getting data. How can I correlate this data in my life as a layman, as an average person? How can I correlate this data to apply to my life?
Okay, let me give an example here, right? And this is a real life example. The other day, about a week back, we were analyzing our own goals, etc. And as you know, as a company, our goal is, our outreach is towards students. And what we found was, what we thought was that the best outreach platform for students would be Facebook, the most powerful, apart from others, of course, right? And then when we did an analysis about a week back, what we realized is each and every student of this world possibly is registered on Facebook, but hardly anyone uses it anymore. They're mostly on Instagram, you know. And
Yeah.
then we came to realize that we were, barking up the wrong tree. That's the reason we were not getting a good response. So in your real life scenario, you can easily get data, understand data for personal and official problems. On a personal side, let's say you want to buy a phone, and let's say you want to buy a Samsung XX model. How would you know whether it's good or bad? You'd go on the internet, you'd search for comments, you'd search for user groups, you'd look at different pricing on different platforms, Amazon or whatever, right? What is that? That is data gathering. And finally, you'll probably make a small, even if it's mental, you'll make a small report in your head and say, okay, technically it is on a scale of 1 to 10, it is 7. It may not compare 100% with Apple, but it's 1/3 the price. It has all the features that I need, and it's got great reviews in terms of support. The battery lasts 10 hours as compared to whatever. That's a personal example of gathering and applying data for a personal decision. So you see, data gathering and data based decisions are not about only data analytical tools or data analytics or data science. It is easily adaptable to our daily personal lives as well. It's basically mental analytics. You need to organize your mind. As I said, 4.0 is a digital ecosystem. Everything is there. You just need to know how to get it. And Google helps you a lot, by the way.
Okay, thank you for that response, Dr. Rohit. We have a question here from William Angelo. So, William, if you are in the room, I'll invite you to unmute your mic and you can pose your question.
Thanks for allowing me to unmute. So I have a question. Like we said that the data is something so essential to make many decisions. Right now with this COVID, there are a lot of lessons learned and circumstances-based decisions are also taken. Do you think that is a viable way of taking decisions and still we insist on data? What would be your advice on that?
See, if data is not available for whatever reasons, then there is nothing else but to depend on circumstantial evidence or perceptions, right? If you look, talking of COVID specifically, there is no data available. It's not happened in the past. Yeah. And if you look at the decisions world leaders are making, I don't think there's a single world leader who's not made a mistake.
Yeah.
And that is although there's no, I'm not blaming them. Please don't take it in that manner. But the point I'm trying to make is there will be situations where there is no data. One goes by gut feel or instinct. There will be mistakes, and one must be open to correct to making those mistakes and correcting those mistakes. So in a situation whereas there's no past data, where there are no trends, where there's no evidence, you have no option but to go by your perception or your gut feel or your instinct. But then be open, because you're taking a risk. Have a risk mitigation strategy in place. That if I make a mistake, this is what I do. If I make this mistake, this is what I do. And the same applies in business, the same applies in your personal life. In business, if you're taking a consciously, if you're taking a decision which is based on perception or gut feel or instinct, be aware that you're doing it, be open to making a mistake, and have a risk mitigation strategy in place. That's what I can recommend.
Okay, thank you for that response, Dr. Shipstone. So I have a question. It's a bit lengthy, and you would have touched a little on it in one of your responses. But the question goes: based on your presentation, data is critical to make well-informed decisions in the future. Today, privacy is becoming more and more important to individuals. Companies like Mozilla and Apple have begun to add privacy controls in their software that would allow persons the power to control how their data is shared and used. Also, governments have begun to make policies that govern how companies manage their data. For example, the GDPR. How can companies get access to data in the future, and how can they make decisions and get this data ethically? So the question is, how can companies get data if more and more persons are becoming more privacy centric, as well as how can companies get this data ethically?
Sure. That's actually a fantastic question from the perspective, okay, partly which has been answered, but you need to see it in two ways. Number one, the getting and using of data is covered under laws. And as long as I'm conforming to those rules, as long as I'm conforming to those laws, I'm fine with that. Now, the thing is, I am not the person, and I made this clear initially also, I'm not the person who's doing the web crawling. I'm not the person who's digging out data, right? I am using certain platforms, certain tools, which conform to the GDPR or the data privacy laws of the given area. I keep referring to the GDPR because today that's considered the strongest package of data privacy laws. Right? The law does not say you cannot use data. The law says what kind of data you can use. Yeah. Now, marketing data typically, with relation to, let's say, products, for example, no individual would have any problem sharing that. In fact, it's all over the net. The user groups have it, the customer groups have it. I mean, you name it, it's there, and it's open, right? No, what is sensitive is essentially data with respect to your mails, with respect to your financials, with respect to certain other confidential documents. And as things progress, as the technology progresses, as blockchain comes more and more into the game, the data protection will be allowed at the highest level. So it is a dynamic situation. I would say the onus is really on the user of the data to make sure that the source is correct and legal, and the usage is correct and legal, because the source will always say this data can be used for X and not Y. Now, if it's saying I should not use it for Y, I should make sure I don't use it for Y. It is dynamic, I know, but at the same time, it is something which the user of the data has to ensure compliance. It's really a compliance issue, and not so much as a issue of crossing a boundary line. I don't know if I made that much sense, but I'm not a data privacy expert, but from what I understand, this is, I base my answer on that. Maybe Shiv can throw some more light on that. It's a very interesting question.
Yes, Shiv, would you like
Yeah,
to add
there are
anything?
Dr. Saab, Dr. Rohit have covered the thing, but I would like to add. See, every government in every country are making the policies about the safety of the data. But safety of what kind of data? Your personal data.
Yeah.
It is not your business data. Business data, it is the property of the organization. Whatever the legal laws in that particular country, it falls on that category. So to gather information about any kind of data, not the personal data. Like in India, we have a unique identification number project that was started in 2010, and we called it Aadhaar. But to make it private, the privacy of that Aadhaar data, Aadhaar belongs to the personal demographic data of an individual in India. That law comes a few years back. So data privacy is a different thing. Data sharing is a different thing. This is what I want to add.
Okay, thank you. Great responses there. So we have just two more questions. So I'd like to ask Shobha if you can unmute your mic and you can pose your question.
Good evening, everyone. So my question is, what is the mean of cookies that we accept on sites that we visit?
Sorry, I didn't get that clearly.
Okay, I got it. Cookies are
Okay.
basically some functionality of the program that was embedded in the website that needs your browser's permission. Those programs will be run on your browsers only. That's why they want your permissions to run those programs.
Okay. Thank you for that. So we have one more question here. If we talk about data privacy, what can be the primary steps? So what can be some of the steps that I as an individual can use to protect my data online from falling into the wrong hands or from being used without my knowledge or permission?
Shiv, would you like to take that?
Yeah, definitely. See, I earlier I said what kind of data I want to protect. My personal data belongs to my demographic data, my banking details, my other details, those I don't want to share with anyone. But what happened if I say personalization, when you search Google frequently, it collects your history in their database, right? So it makes your browser, your Google browser, more personalized to you. So the data Google have used without even your permission, what he have used means what you have searched. But Google don't store your personal data. Google asks you. It is an example. If you make a paid account to the Google, you definitely give your credit card number, banking details. You give your data by your consent to those users like Google, Facebook, or any other. So it is up to you what data you want to share, what data you don't want to share. So over to you.
Yeah, at the same time, let me add that you need to take a few cautionary precautions, in the whole thing, because, for example, and this I keep warning everybody about this. You'll typically find mail IDs, Rohit 1978 at gmail.com. What do you think that 1978 is? That's your year of birth, right? You're giving that out without even meaning to. Or as Shiv said, you're making a payment by a credit card. For your supposed ease, the browser asks you, shall I store it? You should never allow that. Never allow your browser to store your any details. Thirdly, uh, for ease of working on the internet, people typically make one or two passwords which they remember, and they use them for everything, from banks to mail to whatnot. Absolutely wrong step. You should never ever do that. And lastly, change your passwords every month. These are a few precautions. Of course, there are a lot many more. If you go to the GDPR website, you'll find them all there. So in fact, I would advise anybody working with data or anybody interested in data to actually go and do the GDPR. There's a course for that as well. Incidentally, we also have it. Otherwise, go to the GDPR website and read about it. At least be aware where the onus is on you, where the onus is not on you. At least that clarity will be there. And Professor Singh, just for your information, they're going to use blockchain now for student data. So all the student records will be in the ledger, and those will pass from institution to institution or institution to directly to the organization. So their authenticity will be confirmed. So if I'm an organization and I have hired, let's say, somebody X from Professor Singh's college, I would get the students' documents directly from the college by being notified on the blockchain. And I'm sure, Professor Singh, don't you think that will be a very positive step forward?
Yeah, I think that already the processes have been set in motion, and
Yes,
that is going to be the norm in years ahead.
Mm-hmm. And that will take care of a lot of issues which one faces in terms of counterfeit documents and so many issues which are there. So these are typical examples of how data protection will happen, because blockchain is such that unless the user gives permission, nobody can, even St. John's College cannot transfer that data. And vice versa.
Yeah,
The user can't tamper
does
with it
the
unless Professor Singh says so. He doesn't get the right. So that's how it works.
blockchain is a highly secured decentralized application. It's not
Yeah.
a centralized application. It based on nodes, networking, and a number of keys that are generating regularly. So if there is a one change in a one node, it will affect all the nodes.
Yeah.
When all the node accepted that change, then the change happen in that one node is acceptable and stored. Otherwise, one cannot change anything.
Yeah. So
That's why many systems are now transferring onto the blockchain.
Yeah, because that's a very high level of security for your data. So that's the world we're moving into, Riaz. Tomorrow you'll probably have your personal documents not on Dropbox. You'll have it in a blockchain ledger somewhere.
Yes, that's really good. Okay, so we're a little after 10 a.m. in Eastern Caribbean. So I would like to move we close if we have no other questions. Would anyone like to make any closing remarks?
I would like to request Professor Singh for his closing remarks, and then we can move on.
Uh, I believe it was quite an informative kind of session where we dealt with a lot of issues relating to the whole process of data and decision making and how we need to develop these competencies, especially in times where new technologies are affecting, impacting the way things related to data privacy. The new tool, analytic tools are in a way shaping our ways that how data needs to be analyzed and interpreted. And of course, it becomes more incumbent for each one of us to eventually incorporate in our practice of decision making. At the same time, for academia, it becomes extremely important to train young minds, nurture kind of research orientation in them. And I'm sure that greater industry academia connect would pave the way forward where we'll be able to kind of train these young minds into give them practical exposure into these new technologies and harness their potential for the larger good of the industry. And I believe that the courses is specifically designed to enhance to, and I believe that it is important for young students, as there are many, that industry 4 competencies, and of which data application, evaluation, analytics is a very significant kind of competencies. In their own overall learning and academic plan, they'll incorporate it at some stage and will become more equipped uh, to thrive as the industry 4 becomes a norm. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And Shiv, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would like to say to the viewers, see, any revolution, technological revolution gives the opportunities. Like we have seen 4G, smartphones, so many opportunities are there. In Industry 4.0, there are so many opportunities. Based on data, data sciences, a new age technologies like artificial intelligence, your robotics, your blockchain, so many new technologies, so many new opportunities. Students who learn more new things, of course they are learning traditional things also, but many new things. For the professionals, they can upgrade themselves to secure their job or to get another job with the higher packages. So at last, what I want to say, there are so many new opportunities in Industry 4.0, and we welcome this, and we have to be ready for that. That is from my side.
Thank you. And Riaz, I'd like to add that the next session will be on communications, which I think is again a very, very critical part of, I think it's on the 6th of September, a very critical part of 4.0. That is one. And secondly, I think given the interest in the data analytics part, maybe we will add a track on that as well. Not on the 6th, but subsequently. So just saying that for everyone to know. And
Okay,
over to
great.
you,
So
Riaz.
thank you. So we had a great show, and I just want to just add to this that look out for our next web jam on the 6th of September, where we will talk about communication and its importance in the industry 4.0. And it surprised me when we spoke about communication that it's not what we think it would be, where we have to think about communicating with a computer. It's more about human communication. So it's really fascinating. So
Yeah.
I would like everyone to stay tuned to look out in our social media channels on UV Open Campus as well as Whiteboard Labs for that ad going out. So in closing, I would like to thank Mr. Shiv Tohan and Dr. Rohit Shipstone, as well as Dr. SP Singh for their contributions. I would also like to thank, I would like to give a special shout out to Dr. Luz Longsworth for joining us. Hi, Dr. Longsworth. Um, Also, I would like to thank Ashish Kumar, who is helping us on the back end with all the logistics involved in moderating the room, etc. And I would like to thank persons who has posed questions as well as everyone for joining us. So I thank you. It's a little after 10 a.m. in the Eastern Caribbean. So I would like to wish everyone in India a good evening and everyone in the Eastern Caribbean a good day. So thank
Thank you.
everyone for joining
Thank
us,
you.
and we shall see you in the next web jam. Okay, so
And a good
bye
morning
everyone.
from Australia.
Yes,
Yeah.
good morning in Australia. Okay, everyone, have a good
Okay.
day and be safe. Bye.
Thank you, Riaz. Bye. See
Thank you,
you.
Riaz. Bye bye.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. Thanks, Shiv.
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you. Thank you, Doctor.